Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Meringer Family Foundation, and these friends. Welcome to the AmTrust Title webinar series. Steve Napolitano, Senior Executive Vice President. My name is Michael Stoller, host of the Stoller Report. Today we have a unique group of individuals to talk about their view of where the real estate world will be after COVID-19. It's a transitioning time each and every day. So today's guests include Rob Verone, Principal Owner of Ironhound Management Company, LLC, Tony Feynman, who is the Managing Director and Head of Eastern Originations for Acor Capital. And last but not least, our friend in the t-shirts, Andrew Joplin, who is the founder and managing principal at Turnbridge Equities and Turnbridge Real Estate Fund Management. You know, the interesting thing is that Mr. Verone and Mr. Feynman worked together during other crises in the real estate business. How do you look at this compared to the 2001, 2008 and 2009, and now the current crisis? Rob?
2001, you're talking about 9/11, I'm assuming, right? That was a big jolt to liquidity. Prices dropped quickly on our inventory. We sold some loans at a big discount, but that kind of snapped back right away. And the CMBS business at that time was still in its infancy. Probably, it probably was 20% of what it actually grew to 4 or 5 years later. So I don't even view that as a speed bump. We lost a little money, things kind of came back and we moved on. Spreads gapped out and then they tightened and everyone was back to business.
Let's talk about 2008, 2009, when you had the name Big Loan Verone, okay? and you had your other colleague in crime, that cute little guy wearing his blue hoodie, Mr. Feynman. When you were originating loans all the time, and then 2008, the world changed.
Yeah, so listen, the world started changing in 2007. We thought we were very smart and we kind of shut down our fixed rate business early in 2007, but we did a bunch of floaters and we actually closed loans that were under the pipeline, and we lost a ton of money on that stuff that we closed from mid 2007 on. 2008, 2007, we sold as much stuff as we could by New Year's Eve, and I would say we sold, Tony, you would know, $7-8 billion of product at probably 90 cents on the dollar that went to 20 cents on the dollar 3 months later. And then 2008, I was fired by that point, so I was out of there.
Tony, you were recently on a webinar for BizNow, and you made a quote over there. Everybody thought that the world, was ending, but you're saying the situation today is surreal. It's just the beginning of a crisis.
I just want to add to what Rob said. I mean, we're actually pretty early on in this, and I know you opened this up by saying, where are we going to be? You'll hear it from me. My theme is I don't really think we know where we're going to be for sure. And I think the big difference between this and 2008, 9, whatever, as far as I'm concerned, is that you can see the immediacy of a financial crisis here, and we don't know exactly where it takes us. We can all predict some things, but there's also I said surreal because no one was afraid for their health in 2008, 9, and 10. I mean, because of from outside forces, and I think you have this incredible emotional aspect of this, and emotions that are swinging all over the place here. And so, we talk to borrowers all day long, and a lot of the conversations are not rational, and they were, I feel like they were a little more rational in 2008, 2009, 2010, and it actually wasn't even, it first was a financial crisis and then became a crisis for our common borrowers. This became a crisis for everybody immediately, everybody. So I think it's different in that regard, but I'm not predicting where this goes. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult. So.
Let's look at Andrew, who came into the business like in 2007.
6, yeah.
Okay, you're an investor, you're a lender, you have a variety of things. Where do you see today as an opportunity?
It's funny. We, early on, I think there was, like we talked about yesterday, there was a couple trades in the public markets. There was a Freddie Mac K series that traded at 50 cents on the dollar. And then, that was sort of like I call the height of the panic when no one really knew what was going on. It was flushed from a hedge fund that went under because of a margin call. Since then, we haven't really seen much of that and much of that opportunity. So we're, looking in the mezz space like a lot of people, looking at notes, trying to take advantage of stuff that is well priced. But to be honest with you, I don't think it's really come yet. I mean, we spent a lot of time looking for opportunities and haven't felt that we found anything that is really interesting.
It's funny, Andrew.
Ross,
you say you spent a lot of time. We're only like in week 4 of this, right? It's so.
It feels like
he works a lot
harder. It's been 4 years.
Rob, he works like a lot more hours every day than you do, so it is a lot of time.
April felt like it was at least in itself 2 years.
Right.
It was the longest month ever, but I think people are holding on and hoping that this thing is short-lived and that things will come back, and haven't come to grips of reality if they want to trade something that there's a discount to where things were trading pre-COVID.
So here's a question for all of you as lenders and investors and everything else. Are any transactions taking place? Any new transactions? I remember Tony was quoted saying, yeah, any transaction that I was working on in the past may have taken place because it had already started. Rob, you're a big intermediary. Are you seeing anybody pulling the bullet, or everybody's waiting to see what happens before they lend any new money?
I would say 85% on a number of loans of the deals that we were engaged on have died. There's still 15% that I think half of that 15% will close in the next 2 weeks, and the rest, I don't know.
What about new transactions, Rob?
We have 1 or 2 new deals that we've signed applications on, and it's at a reset basis and a reset pricing level.
Tony, you're a lender, okay? What are you guys doing? You put out a lot of money over the last couple of years.
We're lending money to Andrew, really, is what we're doing right now. It's a pretty easy answer. We have a portfolio of 240 loans, about 17 or 18 billion dollars. We're spending 95%. Most of us are spending 95% of our time dealing with that, and I've heard the word defensive. I mean, we're working through things, speaking with borrowers, talking internally about how we want to handle things. Obviously, using the word workout or modifying loans to try to get things to the other side of this. We had about a dozen or so loans that we had signed up. Don't say anything, Rob. Before this happened, and we've closed about a half a dozen of them. They're not the ones that we close are not hospitality loans. We did close a loan with Andrew that we had signed up, and we're working through the rest of them. A few of them will fall out for sure. And as far as new business is concerned, I mean, first of all, the opportunities for new business are very, very, very small. I mean, not just because lenders don't want to lend. There's no one wants to pull the trigger on anything. This has severely reduced the number of transactions that exist in the marketplace today. And then for us, we have to figure out, do we want to spend $1 earning X when we think tomorrow we're gonna earn Y, right? And what's the right place to put out money? I mean, you still have a finite amount of capital, and so to Andrew's point earlier, I think this is very new, and we're all kind of waiting to see how this shakes out a little bit before we dive into anything. That's at least how we're looking at it. So
you know what's funny in this cycle, Michael, is like when the market was very efficient, and let's say things were pricing at 400 over, there's always that one group, or feels like 100 group, that comes to your office and they're like, yeah, we're at 800 over, so we're just going to wait for the market when the market resets. And now you call them up and they're like, and the market may be at 800 over, and they're like, well, we're at 1600 over. It's like they're always just way back of.
Yeah, no, Rob, it's the same thing on the, we meet with obviously a lot of capital partners for larger deals. And, everyone's like, all right, we got, there's so much capital on the sidelines. I read a stat, 38 billion pre-COVID. That was, real estate, private equity raised, sitting on the sidelines, ready to pounce. Right. And, we're kind of at this time now, and everyone's sort of like, yeah, I want to see how it shakes out. If you got a 9-month close, we might look at it with you. And it's just like, I don't know.
Life's too short.
Andrew, you made a number of investments the last couple of years, significantly a number in New York. You did one in the Valentine in New Jersey. So you're still bullish on the industrial market, correct?
Yeah, so all of the New York trades were industrial in the last mile sector. And so I think our furthest asset's about 23 miles from Manhattan. And, it was something where you saw decreasing supply. The only asset class I could think of with decreasing supply and increasing demand. And then, as we mentioned yesterday, you got an aging population now that for the first time ever signing up for things like Amazon and Fresh Direct and Instacart. And, they're thrilled with how easy it is and how user-friendly these things are. And I don't think that's going to change for a long time. So you're seeing, if anything, people lean into e-commerce, and therefore there's going to be, I think, higher demand for warehouse space because there is very limited space in the New York metro area.
What type of lenders did the transactions for you? Were they balance sheet lenders? Were they tough guys like Tony, or the CMBS that Rob sometimes loves to deal with?
So no CMBS, thankfully. Tony's our largest lender. I think we've got 5 or 6 loans together. Acor's, the best. I mean, like Tony said, we closed a deal that we'd signed up pre-COVID in Raleigh. And, what did we close it on, like March 21st, when who knows where the world was going. And, not many lenders would have stepped up, and they did. And for that, we're going to be very loyal to them moving forward. And it's a great relationship. And, I think one of the things I remember back when I was at Fisher in 08, 09 was, you had relationships to lean on, and there's very few people stepping up for their best clients. And the Fishers at the time was M&T Bank, and remember that they kept lending through that time. And so it was very important to me as we start to build our company to align ourselves with great relationships.
Rob, is there a CMBS market today?
Today? No. I mean, you can't get a new bid. No,
I
don't think
had
anyone's
heard
doing 10-year IO. I mean, 10-year financing right now.
So who's doing the deals? I mean, there are certain transactions still, into various stages of development. So who are the lenders today? Is it the insurance companies? Is it the private equity, the debt funds? Where do you see that?
The New York community banks are lending money to signature banks. I mean, I agree with Joblin 150%. Like, you need to treat your relationships well in good times so that they're there in bad times. If you take a blowtorch to your lender on every point and every basis point and every last dollar of proceeds, they're going to cut you pretty quickly. But if you, and I used to have borrowers when we had Wachovia all the time say, have an extra 10 basis points on this loan. They were generous when they could be, and then on a different deal, they'd say, I need you to be 10 tighter. And it was just a relationship, and that's going to come into play.
And this is for all three of you. Andrew, you bought a shopping center in Cary, North Carolina, which was basically an 850,000 square foot shopping center, and you bought Dillard's out most of it. What do you see the repositioning of retail in light of COVID-19?
So, I mean, the Cary, North Carolina example is, that's one of the best growth markets, I think, in the country. You talk about the research triangle, you talk about the job growth. Actually, Tony's my lender. You can't really find a better demographic with such undeveloped area. So in that scenario, we bought that mall really well, and we're sort of kind of rooting for it to empty out because we've just got through rezoning with the town of Cary. I think the big thing is taking these massive enclosed malls. No one wants to be inside of these things. They want to be more of a walkable, mixed-use experience where you can work, live, shop, eat at great food outlets, etc. And so it's really reimagining and taking what is 900 or 1 million square feet of retail, shrinking that probably down to 200,000 square feet maximum, and adding a plethora of other uses like life science, medical office, multifamily, perhaps some for sale product. It really is a reimagining. And as far as the malls go, the biggest impediment to seeing this through, which I think is going to be the huge risk why most malls are going to die, is there's the REA, so the big box folks. They control everything, and if you don't have their approval, you cannot do anything to the existing mall. And these guys can be pretty tough and regimented in their ways. So it's going to be very challenging.
A lot of them might not be there when you have to go soon, so you might be okay.
Yeah, it's true.
One of the things that I'm hearing all the time, and I'm getting phone calls from many people, is I want to buy notes. So everybody's looking to buy. They believe that the banks are open. Everybody's scared, and it's a time that you can buy a note from Tony. You can buy a note from a variety of places. Do you feel it's too early to buy notes?
From Tony.
So I want to tell a funny story before that. So one of our mutual friends who runs a global real estate business called me up and he told me a story. He said, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from my borrower saying, I'm not going to be able to make my debt service payment. I need help. Then at 11 o'clock, he calls me, by the way, I have extra cash lying around if you have any notes you want to sell me. Right? So, usually it's from like a $40 million house.
We have those. We totally have those. We have, I can't, I need help with debt service. I need help with debt service next few months. I have no revenue, but I have cash in case you need any help with some of your loans, right? Yeah. we have a couple of those.
With regard to that, what are you seeing the banks doing with deferrals? Are they?
You keep asking a lot of different questions. We should answer the first one first about whether there's notes for sale.
Answer the one for notes.
I think the answer is there's not notes for sale yet. I mean, I think it is important because I think there's a lot of people out there waiting to pounce on an opportunity. That's what a lot of the phone calls are the last few weeks. And it's just, I think it's the same theme we've talked about a few times. It seems a little early to find the discounts that people are looking for. There's been some sales out there, or at least in mass, there doesn't seem to be the discounted trade that I think there's probably an appetite for. So
yeah, I think that's right. Anything you'd want to own or be interested in at the basis, that's only available at par or maybe a very moderate discount. There's some stuff that is out of the money and the debt's impaired already that, yes, you could buy for a deep discount, but I don't think anyone would be interested.
We have to leave at this time. When we return next week. This is Michael Stoller for the Stoller Report.